All right, everybody, welcome back. We're diving deep today into D.R. Horton's first quarter 2025 earnings call.
The big dog, America's largest home builder.
Exactly. D.R. Horton always gives us a great read on the pulse of the housing market as a whole.
Absolutely a fascinating time to be watching this sector, too.
Right. So much going on that could impact whether you're thinking about buying a home or an investor or just curious about what's happening with real estate.
For sure. So let's break it down. What stood out to you right off the bat from these earnings?
Well, D.R. Horton reported earnings of $2.61 per diluted share for Q1 2025.
Okay, so down 7% from last year.
Yeah, but I'm curious what you think. Is that a big red flag or just kind of a proceed with caution sign given the market we're in?
I think it's more the latter. I mean, interest rates have been a real drag on the housing market.
Totally.
So in that context, D.R. Horton holding their own pretty well.
Yeah, and they're still focused on affordability.
Yes, that's key.
And managing their inventory carefully.
And they're returning value to shareholders, too, over $1 billion back through share repurchases and dividends.
So they're doing a lot of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what about the numbers themselves? Any key metrics or trends that jumped out at you when you dug in a little deeper?
Well, home sales revenue dipped a bit and average closing prices were basically flat compared to last year. Then there's net sales orders. They slipped just 1%.
Okay, so slightly fewer people committing to buy new homes.
Exactly. But here's a bright spot. The cancellation rate actually improved.
Oh, interesting. From both the previous quarter and a year ago.
Yep. Seems like folks who are buying new homes are pretty confident about their decisions.
That makes sense, especially if they're finding good deals.
Right. And, D.R. Horton is doing some cool stuff with their construction cycle times. They've gotten even faster, shaved off a few days from Q4 and almost 3 full weeks compared to last year.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
How are they pulling that off?
I'm not sure if it's streamlining processes or using more prefab components or just better demand forecasting and supply chain management.
Or maybe a combination of all those things.
Probably. But the point is, it's a huge advantage for them in this market.
So more agility, more adaptability.
Exactly. They can adjust their production levels and bring new homes to market way quicker than before.
Smart move. Now, what about inventory? Everyone's watching that closely.
Right. The big question is whether builders are overbuilding or being more cautious.
D.R. Horton seems to be erring on the side of caution. They've reduced their inventory by 15% compared to a year ago.
They're also carefully aligning their starts, the number of new homes they actually start building with current demand.
Yeah, don't want to get caught holding a bunch of empty houses if the market slows down more.
Exactly. So they're playing it safe, but staying flexible at the same time.
Right, because they're still laser focused on affordability.
Exactly. Smaller floor plans, attached homes, those are more budget-friendly options.
And they're doing those mortgage rate buydowns to help buyers manage their monthly payments.
It's like a little boost to make the numbers work better in this high interest rate world.
So even with all these internal factors they're managing, D.R. Horton's still got to deal with those big external forces too, right?
Oh, absolutely. And the big one on everyone's mind right now, the new administration, it's early days, but any policy shifts on stuff like tariffs, immigration, those could have a ripple effect on the whole housing market.
Yeah, for sure. And then, of course, there's a broader economic picture.
Inflation, consumer confidence.
So much happening at once.
It makes following this market really interesting. Now, how about D.R. Horton's rental operations side of things? What's going on there?
Well, they did face some headwinds this quarter. Lower pre-tax income than expected.
Yeah, seems like the capital markets are a bit skittish, and interest rates for rental property buyers are higher.
It's tough out there for landlords these days.
No kidding, but what about D.R. Horton's outlook? What are they saying about the rest of the year?
Well, for Q2 2025, they're projecting revenues to be somewhere between $7.7 and $8.2 billion.
And they expect to close between 20,000 and 20,500 homes.
Right. And for the full fiscal year, they're still aiming for consolidated revenues of $36 to $37.5 billion.
With between 90,000 and 92,000 homes closed.
But they're also saying their gross margins will probably be a bit lower in Q2.
Yeah, those increased incentive costs, those mortgage rate buydowns, they eat into the bottom line a bit.
It's all about finding that balance, right?
Yeah.
Helping buyers while staying profitable.
Right. So their outlook is kind of cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, they're expecting a challenging year, but they think they can still make it a successful one.
Assuming the spring selling season delivers the goods?
Exactly. That's the big wild card. Will buyer demand be strong enough to overcome those affordability hurdles?
We'll have to see. It's going to be an interesting spring, for sure. Speaking of interesting.
Oh, well, you know what time it is, right?
Time for our totally irresponsible
but always entertaining
trade idea of the day.
Remember, folks, this is not financial advice. This is just for fun. Okay, hit me with it. What are we thinking?
Okay, so we talked about D.R. Horton's construction cycle times, right? They're getting
Yeah.
shorter and shorter.
It's super impressive.
So what if, just hear me out,
Okay, I'm listening.
what if we go all in on a surge in demand for their express build homes?
You mean those super quick builds they've been pushing?
Exactly. Those could become even more attractive if buyers are worried about rates going even higher.
I see what you're saying. Lock in that lower rate sooner.
Right. Potentially save a ton of money in the long run.
It's a bit of a gamble,
Oh, for sure.
but it's not totally out there.
Don't at all. It plays right into D.R. Horton's strengths.
Efficiency, speed,
Yep. And who knows, maybe this becomes a trend across the whole housing market.
builders getting faster and faster.
Right. Quick builds could be the next big thing. Okay, but let's step back for a second. Big picture. What are the key takeaways here from D.R. Horton's earnings call?
Well, first of all, they put up solid numbers in a tough market,
Absolutely. Shows real resilience.
and they're clearly committed to affordability, smart inventory management, and rewarding their shareholders.
Can't argue with that.
Plus, they're becoming more and more agile with those improved construction times.
Like a well-oiled machine.
But we can't forget about those external factors.
Right, those can really throw a wrench in the works. Interest rates, inflation, the new administration, who knows what they'll do.
So many wild cards. It's like trying to predict the weather.
Totally. But I think the big question on everyone's mind is, will the spring selling season be strong enough to power through those affordability challenges?
That's what it all comes down to in the end. What did you find most interesting about this earnings call?
You know, I was really struck by how D.R. Horton is tackling that affordability issue. Head on, with smaller floor plans, those mortgage rate buydowns, they're really thinking outside the box.
Yeah, they're not just sitting back and waiting for the market to change. They're trying to make things happen.
Proactive, that's the word I was looking for.
And that's a great lesson for all of us, whether you're a potential home buyer or an investor or just someone trying to understand this crazy market.
Being proactive is key. Got to stay ahead of the game. So, any last thoughts before we wrap up?
Ooh. I like to end with a thought-provoking question, something for our listeners to ponder.
Okay, here's one. We talked a lot about affordability, right? And D.R. Horton seems to be at the forefront of making homes more accessible. So could this actually position them to grab even more market share in the future?
Interesting. It's like they're not just surfing the wave, they're anticipating where the wave is going next.
Exactly. It's all about looking ahead.
All right, folks, that's a wrap on our deep dive into D.R. Horton's Q1 2025 earnings call. We hope you found this insightful, entertaining, and maybe even a little inspiring.
And as always, do your own research, stay informed, and let us know what you think. We love hearing from you.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, happy learning.
Yeah, it's a market that never sits still, that's for sure.
You know, one thing that really hit me during this deep dive is just how resilient the housing market is. I mean, even with these interest rate hikes and affordability concerns, people still need places to live.
It's a basic need, right? Like food and water.
Exactly. And D.R. Horton seems to get that. They're really tuned in to what buyers are struggling with, and they're coming up with ways to make homeownership more realistic.
Yeah, and it's not just about price, right? It's about offering the right kinds of homes for today's buyers.
You're right. We talked about smaller floor plans, more attached options, stuff like that.
Exactly. It makes you think about how much demographics and lifestyles are shaping the housing market, too.
Oh, yeah. Like, are millennials finally ready to settle down? Or is the rise of remote work changing where people want to live?
All those factors are in play, and we could probably do a whole other deep dive just on that, how demographics are reshaping the housing landscape.
Okay, adding that to the list. But before we get sidetracked, any final thoughts you want to leave our listeners with? Something to chew on.
How about this? We've talked a lot about affordability being the key factor right now, and we've seen how D.R. Horton is stepping up to address that. So could this actually set them up to dominate the market even more in the years to come?
That's a great question. It's like they're not just riding the wave, they're figuring out where the wave is going to break next.
Exactly. It's about staying ahead of the curve.
All right, folks, that wraps up our deep dive into D.R. Horton's first quarter 2025 earnings call. We hope you learned some things, had some fun with us, and maybe got some ideas for your own housing journey.
Whether you're buying, selling, investing, or just trying to make sense of it all.
As always, do your research, stay informed, and let us know what you think. We love hearing from you.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us, and until next time, happy learning.